December 19, 1820. An entire family gathers around a bed on a Tennessee farm. The patriarch, John Bell, lies motionless, unable to speak or move. Beside his bed is a small bottle containing a dark liquid that no one remembers ever seeing before. And then, from the shadows of the room, a voice. A voice that didn't belong to any of those present. It's useless trying to save him. I've got him this time. He'll never get out of that bed again. Hours later, John Bell is dead. His family throws the mysterious jar into the fireplace, and a bright blue flame explodes from the ashes. Tennessee is the only state in the United States that has officially recognized the death of a person due to supernatural causes. This is the story of the Bell Witch. Welcome. Today we're going to delve into one of the most documented and disturbing paranormal cases in American history. A case that lasted 4 full years, was witnessed by hundreds of people, and ended with a death that some consider the only officially recognized supernatural murder in the United States. This is not a story of lights in the sky or fleeting shadows. It is the story of an entity that spoke, reasoned, quoted the Bible in multiple languages, and systematically terrorized a respected family in Robertson County, Tennessee. But it is also a story where nothing is as it seems. Where every explanation, whether supernatural or scientific, leaves questions unanswered. Where truth has been intertwined with legend for almost 200 years. Was it truly a vengeful spirit? A meticulously planned poisoning? An elaborate deception born of love? Or something we cannot yet comprehend? Today we're going to examine the evidence, listen to the testimonies, and explore the theories. Because after almost 2 centuries, the case of the Bell Witch remains unsolved. And it begins, like many horror stories, with something seemingly simple. A strange animal in a cotton field. The year is 1817. Robertson County, Tennessee, is still frontier land. The United States has only been out of the war with Great Britain for 3 years. Life here is simple: farming, church, and community. John Bell is 67 years old. He is a prosperous, respected man. He owns 1,000 acres of fertile land along the Red River. He is an elder at Red River Baptist Church. He is the father of 9 children. He is one of those men who build communities. His wife, Lucy Williams Bell, came from a prominent family. They married when she was 12 years old, a common occurrence at the time, and together they raised not only a family, but a small plantation with enslaved workers. Of her 9 children, the youngest is Elizabeth. Everyone calls her Betsy. In the summer of 1817, she is barely 12 years old. Dark-haired, lively, intelligent. A girl who is about to become the center of something inexplicable. Summer of 1817, the first warnings. The events begin in an almost comical way. Almost. John Bell is inspecting his cornfield one afternoon when he sees it, an animal sitting between the rows. But it's not an animal he recognizes. It has the body of a dog, but the head of a rabbit. Bell, a pragmatic man, does what any farmer would do: he shoots it. The animal disappears. Literally. No carcass. No trace. No blood. Bell returns home uncomfortable, but not alarmed. Perhaps it was the light. Perhaps tiredness. Days later, his son Drew approaches a bird perched on a fence. A bird he doesn't recognize. Enormous. Unnatural. When he tries to approach, the bird takes flight, and Drew swears it was of extraordinary size. Betsy, the youngest daughter, sees a girl in a green dress swinging from an oak tree. A girl she doesn't know. When she blinks, the girl has disappeared. And Dean, one of the family's slaves, begins to be followed by a large black dog every time he visits his wife at night. A dog that never barks. That never gets too close. That simply watches. The Bell family mentions these things briefly among themselves. Curiosities. Oddities. But nothing more. Until the sounds begin. One night, everyone is asleep when it starts. Knocking on the outside walls of the house. Not loud, but persistent. John Bell goes outside with a flashlight and a rifle. No one is there. The following night, the knocking is inside. On the interior walls. Then on the bedroom doors. Then come the scratching on the windows. The sound of chains dragging across the wooden floor. The noise of something gnawing at the bedposts as the family tries to sleep. John Bell is a rational man. He checks every room. He looks for animals, drafts, any explanation. But every night, the sounds return. And every night, they're a little louder. The youngest children begin to wake up crying. They say something is pulling at their blankets. That they feel invisible hands touching them. For months, John Bell has kept this a secret. He's a church leader. A respected man. What will people say if he talks about ghosts in his house? But then the phenomena escalate. And there's no way to keep it a secret anymore. Late 1817, early 1818. The sounds are no longer enough for that, whatever is in the Bell house. Now things are flying. Plates are being thrown off shelves by themselves. Chairs are moving when no one is touching them. Blankets aren't just being pulled, they're being violently ripped from beds, leaving children exposed to the cold Tennessee nights. And then, one night, he begins to whisper. At first, no one is quite sure what they're hearing. It's faint. Distant. As if someone were speaking from behind the walls. The whispers are too low to make out words, but unmistakably, it's a human voice. Woman's voice. For weeks, the voice grows. It gets stronger. And one night, it finally speaks clearly. No one remembers exactly what he said first. But everyone remembers that when he did, the whole family froze in terror. Because it wasn't a voice from somewhere. It was a voice from everywhere. The entity, because it is now impossible to call it anything else, begins to converse. And this is where the case becomes truly disturbing. Because this isn't a silent presence that bangs on walls. It's something that thinks, that reasons, that has opinions and knowledge. The voice quotes the Bible word for word. It recites entire sermons. It speaks in multiple languages. And in a moment that defies explanation, it simultaneously repeats two different sermons being given at the same time in churches 13 miles apart. How? Nobody knows. The family asks him who he is. And after changing his story several times, first claiming to be the spirit of a Native American, then a nameless ghost, he finally declares. I'm the witch from old Kate Batts. Kate Batts is a real neighbor. A woman with a reputation for a difficult temper. The Bell family had disputes with her over slave sales and land. But Kate Batts is alive. And when the family asks the voice if it really is Kate Batts, the answer is evasive. Ambiguous. But the name remains, Kate. And Kate has hatred in her heart. Hatred directed specifically at two people, John Bell, and his daughter Betsy. The torment begins. John Bell tries to keep this private, but it's impossible. The sounds are too loud. The neighbors can hear them from outside. And when James Johnston, a close family friend, spends the night at the house and witnesses the phenomena, he tells John something that will change everything. This is bigger than you, John. People need to know that. And so the news spreads. First to the immediate neighbors. Then throughout the county. And soon, throughout all of Tennessee. And people come. Dozens. Hundreds. They camp on the Bell property, waiting their turn to enter the house and witness the Bell Witch. Some come skeptical. They leave as believers. Others come out of curiosity. They leave terrified. Ministers come to pray and cast out the demon. Kate mocks them, quotes scripture better than they do, and makes them look foolish. And in the midst of all this, Betsy Bell suffers. Witnesses saw it. Dozens of people witnessed Betsy, a girl of just 13 years old, being physically attacked by something invisible. Her hair was pulled so hard her head snapped back. Slaps appeared on her face out of nowhere, leaving red handprints. Pinches left dark bruises on her arms. During the most severe attacks, Betsy would lose consciousness. She would collapse to the floor, gasping for breath, while Kate's voice laughed in the shadows. Why Betsy? Nobody knows for sure. But there's something even more disturbing. Betsy has a suitor. A young man from the village named Joshua Gardner. He's handsome, hardworking, and from a good family. And Betsy is in love. When Joshua and Betsy get engaged, Kate goes crazy. The attacks on Betsy intensify when Joshua is nearby. Objects fly toward him. A voice shouts threats at him. On one occasion, something invisible pushes him so hard that he falls to the ground. And Kate makes her demand clear: Betsy will never marry Joshua Gardner. Never. But the attacks on Betsy, as terrible as they are nothing compared to what Kate is doing to John Bell. John Bell is dying. Slowly. It starts with his mouth. A strange paralysis makes it difficult for him to speak. Then his jaw goes numb. Chewing becomes difficult. Swallowing becomes painful. Then come the facial spasms. Uncontrollable tics. Convulsions that throw him from his chair. Fatigue so profound that some days he can barely get out of bed. The doctors have no explanation. No treatment works. And with each passing month, John Bell grows weaker. And meanwhile, Kate's voice whispers in the nights. I'm going to torment him to death. And I will. Excommunication. In 1818, something extraordinary happened. The Red River Baptist Church excommunicated John Bell. Officially, the charge is usury, charging excessive interest on a slave sale transaction with Kate Batts. But everyone in the community knows about the events at the Bell house. Is this an attempt by the church to distance itself from something demonic? Or did John Bell actually do something darker that explains why he's being tormented? No one knows. But for a man like John Bell, an elder in his church for years, this excommunication is a devastating humiliation. And Kate, invisible but omnipresent, celebrates. December 1820. 3 years have passed since the torment began. John Bell is now 70 years old, and he is barely a shadow of his former self. He can walk with assistance. His speech is almost unintelligible. The spasms are constant. The morning of December 19, 1820, is cold. John Bell tries to get out of bed, and cannot. He cannot move his arms. He cannot speak. His eyes are open, but he does not respond. His family gathers around him, frantic. Lucy sends for the doctor. His children search the house for anything that might help. And then Richard, the 6-year-old son, finds something strange. In the medicine cabinet, there's a small bottle that no one has ever seen before. It contains a dark, almost black liquid. No label. No explanation of how it got there. The family looks at each other. Nobody knows where he came from. And then the voice. Kate. Louder than ever. I gave old Jack a big dose of that last night while he was fast asleep, and it fixed him. John Bell Jr., the eldest son, holds the vial with trembling hands. Is this really poison? Did Kate somehow? There's only one way to find out. They take the family cat. With a straw, they touch the liquid to the animal's tongue. The cat dies in seconds. It convulses violently and collapses. The family stared at the jar in horror. If this killed the cat so quickly, what did it do to John Bell? Alex Gunn, a neighbor present, snatches the jar from John Jr.'s hands and throws it into the fireplace. What happens next is impossible, but it was witnessed by everyone in the room. The jar explodes. And from the flames comes a brilliant blue blaze that rises up the chimney as if the fire itself were alive. John Bell died hours later, on December 20, 1820. His funeral should be a moment of respect. John Bell, despite his excommunication, was a pillar of his community for decades. The church is full. The minister begins the sermon. And then Kate appears. Not physically, of course. But his voice fills the church. It interrupts the service. And to the horror of everyone present, he begins to sing drunken songs at full volume, mocking, celebrating John Bell's death. The attendees are paralyzed. Some are crying. Others are fleeing. Kate has won. With her father dead, one would think Betsy Bell would finally have peace. But no. The following months are hell. Kate intensifies her attacks. Every time Joshua Gardner visits, the phenomena worsen. Objects fly. Betsy is beaten. The voice screams threats. Joshua is a brave young man. He tries to resist. He insists that they will get married no matter what. But in March 1821, Betsy couldn't take it anymore. One night, while strolling along the River Red, Betsy says to Joshua the words Kate has been waiting for. "I can't marry you." Joshua is devastated. He begs her to reconsider. But Betsy knows that if she continues, Kate will never stop. She'll torment her until she kills her, just like she killed her father. With tears in her eyes, Betsy breaks off the engagement. And immediately, as if someone had flipped a switch, everything stops. The blows stop. The voice falls silent. The objects stop flying. The witch Bell has left. Almost. Because before disappearing completely, Kate leaves one final message. "I'm leaving now. But I'll be back in 7 years." The Bell family breathes a sigh of relief, but with a shadow hanging over their heads. 7 years. 1828. Will he really return? 1828, the return. February 1828. Exactly 7 years later, as promised. Lucy Bell, now a widow, lives in the house with 2 of her sons, Richard Williams and Joel. Most of the Bell siblings have left, building their own lives away from the property. One night, the beatings begin. The beds shake. The sounds return. And Kate's voice is heard again in the house. But this time, the Bell family makes a decision: they're not going to feed this. They don't respond to voices. They don't react to phenomena. They simply ignore everything. And after approximately 3 weeks, Kate leaves again. This time, he leaves no promise of return. What really happened? Here's the problem: almost everything we just told you comes from a single source. In 1846, 25 years after the events, Richard Williams Bell, who was only 6 years old when it all began, wrote a manuscript called Our Family Trouble. This manuscript remained unpublished for decades. Until 1894, when a journalist named M.V. Ingram found it and published the book, An Authenticated History of the Famous Bell Witch. Show image of Ingram's book. The book is a success. The story of the Bell Witch is exploding in popularity. But there's a huge problem. Nobody has seen Richard Williams Bell's original manuscript. Ingram says he has it. That he worked directly with him. But he never presents it. And after his death, he disappears. In 2015, a professional analysis of the book's writing style suggested that Ingram likely wrote the entire thing himself. The vocabulary, the biblical references, the language, everything points to a man from the late 19th century, not someone writing in 1846 about events from 1817. Does this mean that Ingram invented everything? Not necessarily. But it does mean we can't rely on the specific details. What do we know for sure? Verifiable facts. The Bell family existed and lived in Robertson County, Tennessee. John Bell died on December 19 to 20, 1820. John Bell was excommunicated from his church in 1818 on charges of usury. Betsy Bell married Richard Powell in 1824, not Joshua Gardner. There was an oral tradition in Tennessee about strange events on the Bell property. What we don't know. The specific details of paranormal phenomena. Most of the direct quotes attributed to Kate. If Andrew Jackson really visited the house, probably not. The actual existence of the poison bottle. Almost everything dramatic makes the story fascinating. There is a contemporary mention of the case, the diary of a military officer named John Arth Bell, no relation to the family, who in October 1820, 2 months before John Bell's death, visited Robertson County and wrote briefly about rumors of a young woman accompanied by a voice. That's it. A two-line mention in a newspaper. Everything else we know about the bell, which comes from accounts written 60 to 70 years after the events, based on memory and oral tradition. So what really happened? Theory 1, it was real, a poltergeist. Those who believe in the paranormal point to several elements. Hundreds of witnesses camped on the property. Skeptical members of the community entered the house doubting and left convinced. Ministers, doctors, educated people, all reported witnessing inexplicable phenomena. The events lasted 4 full years. If it was a hoax, it was the most elaborate and sustained hoax in 19th-century rural American history. Kate's voice held knowledge that seemed impossible. She quoted sermons being delivered at that very moment miles away. She spoke multiple languages. She knew the Bible better than the ministers. And the pattern fits perfectly with documented poltergeist cases around the world, phenomena centered on a teenage girl, Betsy, physical violence, moving objects, and eventual disappearance. But there is no physical evidence. There are no photographs, they didn't exist in 1817. There are no recordings. There is no serious contemporary documentation. And most of the witnesses never wrote their own accounts. Everything we know comes filtered through M.V. Ingram decades later. Theory 2, arsenic poisoning. In 2017, Dr. Megan Mann, a professor of chemistry at Austin Peay State University, published a fascinating analysis of the case. She proposes something radical. John Bell was slowly murdered with arsenic over 3 years. Let's look at the evidence. John Bell's symptoms are perfectly consistent with chronic arsenic poisoning. Progressive facial paralysis. Difficulty swallowing, dysphagia. Spasms and convulsions. Garlic breath odor, a classic symptom. Gradual deterioration over years. Arsenic was readily available in 1817. It was sold as rat poison in any general store. The mysterious flask, when thrown into the fire, it produced a bright blue flame. Do you know exactly what causes that effect? Arsenic. It's called the element's emission spectrum. There aren't many substances that do that. The cat's quick death. Cats lack certain liver enzymes, making them extremely vulnerable to certain poisons. If the bottle contained arsenic in high concentrations, the cat would die in seconds, but for John, small doses over years would kill him slowly. So who poisoned him? Dr. Mann suggests 3 possibilities. Someone from the church who did not approve of John Bell. Remember that he was excommunicated. One of the plantation slaves, taking revenge on his owner. Kate Batts or someone connected with her, in revenge for land disputes. This theory brilliantly explains the death of John Bell, but it doesn't explain everything else. What about the banging on the walls? The flying objects? The attacks on Betsy? The voice? Theory 3, the Richard Powell deception. This is perhaps the darkest theory. Richard Powell was Betsy Bell's teacher. He was 28 when she was 12. And he was in love with her. In 1824, 3 years after the phenomena ended, Betsy married Richard Powell. She was 18. He was 34. Coincidence? Some researchers suggest that Powell orchestrated everything to separate Betsy from Joshua Gardner. Circumstantial evidence. Powell had training and knowledge of ventriloquism and illusion techniques. He had constant access to the Bell house as the children's teacher. Powell's wife conveniently died in 1821, just after the death of John Bell. John Bell opposed any romantic interest Powell had in Betsy. The phenomena stopped completely when Betsy broke up with Joshua. The problem. How could Powell have created phenomena witnessed by hundreds of people over 4 years without ever being discovered? How can we explain the events that occurred when he wasn't present? Some theorists have suggested that Powell built secret passages in the Bell house, but the house plans show no evidence of this. And it would be nearly impossible to build them without the family noticing. Theory 4, abuse and trauma, the psychological explanation. In the 1940s, psychoanalyst Nander Fodor proposed something disturbing. The bell, which was a psychological manifestation, a poltergeist yes, but one unconsciously created by Betsy Bell herself as a result of sexual abuse by her father. Fodor points out that poltergeist phenomena have historically centered on traumatized teenagers. Betsy was the main victim of the physical attacks. The entity specifically hated John Bell and Joshua Gardner, two male figures. The attacks were more violent when romantic intimacy was nearby. John Bell's excommunication from the church may have been due to inappropriate behavior that the community was aware of but did not speak about. This theory is impossible to prove, but it fits with what we now know about trauma, dissociation, and modern poltergeist cases. Theory 5, it simply never happened. The simplest explanation, most of the story is fiction. Something strange probably happened at the Bell House between 1817 and 1821. There is enough evidence from contemporary oral tradition to believe that. But the dramatic details, the elaborate conversations with Kate, the vial of poison, the blue flame, the hundreds of witnesses, were gradually added over decades of oral storytelling and finally solidified into the fiction that M.V. Ingram published in 1894. The story sold newspapers. It sold books. And it created a tourism industry for Adams, Tennessee that continues to this day. Is it cynical to think this way? Perhaps. But it's also the explanation that requires the fewest extraordinary assumptions. What happened to the Bells? After 1821, the Bell family tried to move on. Lucy Bell remained on the property until her death. She never remarried. Betsy Bell Powell had 8 children with Richard Powell. According to her family, it was a happy marriage. She lived to an advanced age, dying in Mississippi at the home of one of her daughters. Until the end of her life, she insisted that everything that had happened was real. John Bell Jr. became a prosperous farmer and businessman, inheriting the plantation. Drury Bell, the son who saw the giant bird at the beginning of it all, was never the same. He became a recluse. He never married. Something during those years broke him. The rest of the Bell brothers lived normal lives, got married, had families, and died of old age. But none of them spoke much about what happened again. Adams, Tennessee, House of the Witch Bell. Today, Adams, Tennessee, population approximately 650 people, identifies itself as home of the Bell Witch. The original Bell estate no longer exists, but the Bell Witch Cave, a cave on the property where Kate supposedly took refuge, is open to the public. Thousands of tourists visit it every year. There are constant reports of paranormal activity. Strange lights. Voices. Unexplained sensations. Paranormal investigators regularly visit the area. Is it real? Probably not. Is it a good business? Definitely. America's only supernatural murder. Tennessee has the dubious honor of being the only state where a death was officially attributed to the supernatural. Except, it probably wasn't. There are no official Tennessee state documents stating John Bell was killed by a ghost. This is part of the legend, not verifiable history. But the myth persists. Because it's a good story. And good stories have a life of their own. So, what was the Bell Witch? After almost 200 years, the honest answer is, we don't know. Was it a vengeful spirit tormenting a family? Possibly, if you believe in such things. The testimonies of hundreds of people cannot be completely dismissed. Was it a meticulously planned murder using poison, disguised as a supernatural phenomenon? Science says it's possible. The symptoms fit too perfectly. Was it an elaborate hoax perpetrated by an obsessed teacher or by Betsy herself? Some researchers strongly believe so. Or was it simply a combination of minor real events, exaggerated to the point of absurdity over decades of oral tradition, and finally crystallized into fiction by a journalist seeking to sell books? Perhaps that is the most likely explanation. But there is something that bothers me about all these rational explanations. Why did hundreds of people, neighbors, ministers, doctors, rational people in the community, report having witnessed inexplicable phenomena? Why would a respected family allow their reputation to be destroyed if it was all a deception they knew about? Why did Betsy Bell, until the day she died decades later, insist that it had all been real? I don't have answers. But I do have questions. And perhaps that is the true legacy of the witch bell. Not certainty, but doubt. Not answers, but mystery. Because in an era where everything seems to have an explanation, where science has illuminated almost every dark corner, it's strangely comforting to know that there are still stories that make us wonder. And if? What do you think? Was it real? Was it poison? Was it a hoax? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your theory. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. I have more cases like this coming soon. And if you ever visit Adams, Tennessee, be careful in the cave. Because according to the locals, Kate is still there. Expecting.